There is a moment that appears again and again in biblical stories right before breakthrough. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't look powerful. In fact, most readers move past it without noticing anything unusual, because on the surface it feels ordinary. But when you begin to look more carefully, something interesting becomes visible. Across many different passages, a similar moment appears just before the story shifts in a major way. A moment where everything seems to slow down, where options begin to disappear, where the narrative becomes quieter. And once you start recognizing this moment, you may begin to see it everywhere. When people think about biblical breakthrough, they often imagine the moment of change itself. The miracle, the intervention, the dramatic event that transforms the story. But ancient storytelling rarely works that way. Breakthrough does not simply appear, it is prepared. The narrative gradually builds toward it. Situations become more difficult, possibilities become limited, and the story begins to narrow. This narrowing changes the emotional weight of the moment that follows. Because when everything still feels open, change does not feel powerful. But when everything seems closed, even a small shift becomes significant. One of the most consistent elements that appears before breakthrough is limitation. The story reaches a boundary. Human effort reaches its limit. Resources run out, options disappear, and the narrative does not immediately solve the problem. Instead, it allows the tension to remain. This moment is important because it prepares the reader. It allows the weight of the situation to settle. And it creates the emotional space where breakthrough will matter. Without limitation, breakthrough feels optional. But when limitation becomes unavoidable, breakthrough feels meaningful. Another detail often appears at this point in the narrative. The story slows down, movement pauses. Dialogue becomes quieter. For a brief moment, it feels as if nothing is happening. But in ancient storytelling traditions, pauses are rarely empty. They are structural. They guide the listener's attention. They create anticipation. And they signal that the story may be approaching a turning point. The pause gives the reader time to feel the tension that has been building. Ancient writers often communicated meaning through structure rather than explanation. Instead of directly telling the reader that something important was about to happen, they shaped the rhythm of the story. The order of events mattered. The pacing mattered. The placement of quiet moments mattered. These structural choices guided the reader's emotional experience. They created anticipation without needing dramatic announcements. And because of that, the moment of breakthrough often feels powerful even before the reader fully understands why. Once you begin to recognize this structure, you may start noticing it across many different passages. First, the narrative narrows. Then a pause appears. And then something shifts. The pattern is not always identical. But the rhythm is often similar: limitation, stillness, then change. This structure appears often enough that many scholars believe it was used intentionally in ancient storytelling. When readers begin to notice these patterns, the experience of reading scripture begins to change. Small details start to feel meaningful. Moments that once seemed unimportant become interesting. Pauses become intentional. Silence becomes part of the story. Instead of rushing toward the dramatic moments, the reader begins to pay attention to the structure leading up to them. And that structure often reveals layers of meaning that were easy to miss before. Perhaps the most fascinating part of many biblical stories is not only the breakthrough itself, but the quiet structure that prepares it, the narrowing, the tension, the pause before the shift, moments that many readers move past quickly. Yet those moments may be the very place where the story begins to turn. Because sometimes the most important moment in the story is not the miracle itself, but the moment right before it. The moment where everything slows down, just before everything changes.